This is like the third field report in a row where the guy came back and did some work. I feel like it's Christmas. Welcome, another Mids Watch, Jack 10 of Hearts, and in this guy, eco-friendly throwaway, another married guy asking if he went too far with Dread. Now, if you're new to the channel and you don't know what Dread is a bunch of definitions, but I'll use the Jack one here, Jack 10 of Hearts, a very prolific poster where he calls it the process of teaching yourself not to be taken for granted. So he thanks everybody for the comments. He's like, guys, it's been a while since I've posted. Partially because things have been going well. Partially because I've been so busy with work in the gym. The map, baby. Male action plan. Not the other map. This shit works. This is awesome. In any event, tonight my wife started shit with me about how I don't treat her well and that she doesn't feel good about us and etc. And I asked her repeatedly, what the hell are you talking about? Negative inquiry. That's a tool. I'm not going to go into the details on the tools. I have a sidebar series that goes in all these descriptions, but negative inquiry is a psychological tool you use to handle these kind of like conflicts. But she couldn't give me an answer. I was using Amuse Mastery quite a bit, as well as repeating numerous times that she alone controls her feelings and it's not my job to constantly fret about them. Pausing here, notice he's talking too much. It's great that he knows all the tools, but it's like a basketball player who constantly describes how he's getting dunked on. Don't spout the rules, just play the game. So, where did he leave off? Oh, here we go. So he doesn't have the time and energy for this. Finally, she starts mocking him, and he won't stand for that shit. So he says, what you're doing right now is disrespectful and unacceptable. The last episode, by the way, dealt with, like, disrespectful stuff, so it'd be good to go back and get caught up. Now, admittedly, he's a bit angry. He gets up, gets ready to head to the coffee shop, and she's yelling about how he treats her like shit, etc. She won't stop yelling, so I finally say, this is your only warning. If you act disrespectful like this again, I'm going to ignore you. And secondly, if you don't like the way you're treated, you know where the door is. He's like so close to getting it, by the way, but he's like, he keeps screwing it up by talking too much. By the way, this is why shut the fuck up is such a highly valued skill set, because guys like this need to use it. Anyways, I think I was calm when I said it, but I'm guessing the anger came out in my tone. I feel like I laid on the Dread a bit too hard. I left, and then she had spent the night so far taking care of what I needed to get taken care of and hanging out while I'm hanging out at the coffee shop and reading. My real problem is, in swallowing the red pill, is that I don't give a shit if she's mad at me or what. But I do like to keep a calm house, and we have a kid to worry about. He's like, oh, I left out something. He paused. It's always after like 8 people comment. They're like, oh, by the way, here's an unimportant detail that I totally forgot. The wife has made it a habit of putting out all the throw pillows on my side of the bed when she goes to sleep. In the past, I'd take them, put them gingerly on the floor on the other side of the room so I don't wake her up, then I get into bed. And I realized a few nights ago, this was annoying as shit and an easily avoidable problem if she would just put the pillows right on the floor next to her when she gets into bed instead of my side. So I told her, wife, when you get into the bed, put the pillows on the floor next to you. I don't like them on my side of the bed. And that night, pillows on my side of the bed. So she calls him an asshole, and you know what I mean? Like, this is not the issue. The fact that he, like, after careful consideration and deliberation, clearly the issue here is the throw pillows. And I'm like, I love this as a great example of guys who are starting to get it, but don't get it. Everybody always says, what's frame? And you're like, well, it's hard to describe, but once you have it and you can see it, you know what it is. This is a great example. The guy thinks he's red-pilled. He thinks this shit's great. He thinks he's figured it out. But he's making super obvious mistakes because he just doesn't get it yet. He's talking too much. He's negotiating desire. And that or else threat, don't ever do that. Because a girl will call your bluff on it. They always do. They're hardwired to call you out on it. And to be fair, the last 500 times you've said or else in your relationship, you've never followed through. So why would she? And then this guy again, he still thinks of it like tips and tricks and good responses. Holy shit, this stuff is great. I left our house for 3 hours. I came back. She was giving me the silent treatment. I acted like nothing happened. And then, you know, within half an hour, she was all over me. I would have posted this earlier, but I was too busy getting busy. It's like, yeah, you're the man, dude. Anyways, So Jack's actually been following this guy for a while. He's like, I've been following you for a while here, and based on your description of events, this sounded like a comfort test. There's 2 types of tests, by the way. Fitness tests, also called shit tests, and comfort test. The idea of a shit test is she's sexually attracted to you, wife, girlfriend, plate, whatever. And they kind of need to like verify if that attraction is like a real thing or a fake signal. And that's what a shit test is. Generally bratty behavior. Second one is a comfort test, where the idea is they're worried about losing you, they're worried about losing your affection, your validation, and they kind of do like a cry for help. Think of it the way, you know, the daughter wants dad to look at her when she's doing whatever. Anyway, so he talks about his map and being good at the gym. He's like, well, good for you that your goals are the work in the gym, but how are things going with your wife beforehand? You may have transitioned to, I'm so relieved my wife doesn't give me shit anymore that I don't respond like a beta bitch. And that's important. But the next step is actually enjoying your marriage. And I'll talk about this at the end. And then he kind of brings up the whole like spiraling hamster wheel shit the wife was like. Her previous shit test revolved around grievances and specific incidents. Not cleaning up your cup in the sink, and not taking her mom's bag downstairs. It sounds like if she's been shit testing you, she would use a specific incident. Since she was unable to articulate an actual problem, even if it is a fake problem, to me, this is more evidence that it's a comfort test. My best guess is because she's subconsciously aware that you've reestablished and become more attractive, and that's freaking her out. By the way, there's a couple indications that I find were useful for guys who may not be able to tell the difference between a fitness test and a comfort test. Generally speaking, if it's something about you, it's a shit test or a fitness test. If it's something about her, it's a comfort test. You know, you're an asshole, fitness test. Am I attracted to you or what? I don't know if I can do this anymore, comfort test. She's looking for reassurances, right? Now, whether you respond to them, there's a whole other thing. I'm not going to belate you on, or I'm not going to bother you with those ones here, but anyway, so the guy's talking about his Amuse mastery, repeating his broken record, you know, repeating himself, and that you're in control of your anger or your feelings and not me. Jack's like, I don't think this was a good approach. First reason, techniques like Amuse mastery or Agree and Amplify are best used when your wife is asserting or complaining about something trivial. You decided to go into checkout lane 4 at Costco even though checkout lane 3 was shorter. Now your wife is all, why didn't you pick the shorter line? Why is this guy ahead of us with 2 full carts? We won't get home by 5, blah, 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 blah. Those are Amuse mastery situations. Those are Agree and Amplify situations. They directly give this isn't a big deal and I'm not going to give a shit. Now the direct, you don't give a shit about me confrontation is not a great candidate for Amuse mastery. It was a little later, but it was 2 or 3 episodes ago where I talked about where a lot of guys who have difficulty doing this, and this is something we come up to, like this is like 6 months earlier than that, so we didn't know it at the time. But if you're not able to tell if it's a shit test or a comfort test, Agree and Amplify is actually a good tool to suss it out. Because if you use Agree and Amplify, and then she doubles down on the thing, you realize it was a comfort test. But if Agree and Amplify responds with something more akin of like, okay, I was spiraling, whatever, then you guess it right. So add that into this, just to be aware. It's one of the issues I guess you have with like going over old field reports from almost all the way up to a decade back, is there's a lot of things that have been kind of cleaned up and updated and refined and fixed in the meantime. So I just have to make an effort to point them out when they're there, so somebody reading this doesn't think, never use Agree and Amplify. There's a point. Secondly, though, you want to be consistent with your tone. It sounds like you started using Amuse mastery. She kept harping about you don't give a shit about me, because Amuse mastery is generally not a good response to a comfort test, and then you switch to being serious. And then she starts mocking you, probably because she received your Amuse mastery and perceived it as you mocking her. Remember before the last episode where we were talking about bad responses to condescending behavior? You know, give it back in kind. That's how a child would respond. It's not adult-like. But the wife is doing it. It's like, yeah, when they're emotional, they're going to be more childlike in these responses. You just have to be ready for it. And don't play into it. That's her frame. Your frame is we're adults here and we're not going to yell like children. She was trying to be serious. You responded with Amuse mastery. That hurt her feelings, you know, aka failing the comfort test. But then, when you started being serious, she saw an opportunity to hurt you by mocking you, since you had already failed the test. In principle, be consistent in your interactions. Now, ideally, you want to be able to identify them and be consistent in your interactions. If you don't know, Agree and Amplify, She doubles down this situation. So what you need to take this specific type of situation as an indication that you're misreading what she's trying to communicate. In this case, it's a comfort. She wants comfort. She's worried about losing you. She's freaked out that you're becoming more attractive, right? Learn it so you can forget it and start enjoying it. And when the guy was talking about, I guess it was angry in my tone, even though I thought I was being calm. He's like, dude, personally, I can't say shit like, you know where the door is, without sounding angry. I think it was pretty clear you were in a go fuck yourself mode at this point. You had to at least know subconsciously that there was zero chance she would say, thank you, warning acknowledged, I'll stop mocking you. So there's no point in giving an explicit warning. Just start packing up your shit to leave, and if she says, where are you going, what are you doing, then just say, I'm not going anywhere unless you can't stop yourself from freaking out on me. Or he worded that wrong, but basically, I'm leaving until you get your shit together. That's your warning. The first warning is actually enforcing your boundary. That's the whole point of it. Don't do warnings. Warnings are ultimatums. Ultimatums never work. They always call your bluff. And in this example, you can see that she absolutely did. And it's instinct. So you can't train it out of her any more than you can train you to stop feeling hungry. So if you think the conversation is beyond that point, then just leave. But an explicit, this is your last warning, it's just silly. And the guy brought up his, we call this, there's actually a term for it where he talks about how he just doesn't give a shit if she's angry or anymore. It's like the residual anger phase. It's at the point where you kind of go numb to these things and you're no longer responsive, but you're no longer mad about it too. And it's part of the process, whatever. So Jack's like, let me sum up what I think your root problem is. Your wife has historically given you shit tests, fitness tests, testing for attraction. You swallowed the red pill, so now you don't even sweat them. You're doing great with fitness, you're doing great with work, and this is causing feelings of insecurity and fear within your wife. That's kind of the purpose of Dread. Now that he stopped allowing himself to be taken for granted, he's attractive and she's worried. Welcome to attraction. She's feeling threatened, but she's hamstring that as, you don't give a shit about me. That's solipsism, by the way. It's another term where nothing exists outside of the girl's own ego. And in this case, anything you do, anything you say has to be filtered through, how does this affect me? In this case, it's never that the girl is, I'm not slacking. It's that you don't love me anymore. Like, do you see that? It's always about me. Because she's scared you'll develop so much value, you're actually going to stop giving a shit about her and go fuck other women. It's a limbic brain thing. It's in the back of your head, right? So now you're getting comfort tests, which are novel to you, and she wants you to reassure her that basically you're going to stick around. Now, the barrier I see most men have with comfort tests is this. You should still be investing time and effort in your marriage and making everybody around you happy. God knows I can't post without making the captain first officer analogy, so let me do it here. A comfort test is your wife worried she's not even your first officer anymore. She's thinking, okay, the captain's taking command of the ship again, but he's not speaking to me at all, not even to give me orders. Is he checked out? And this happens because a lot of captains never ask themselves, what do I want in a first officer? So then the wife does some desirable behaviors, they don't know how to recognize those and reward them, so they're relieved their wife has stopped giving them shit, but they don't ask themselves, okay, now that she's no longer a negative in my life, what do I want that's a positive? Then you get back to that, because that's actually kind of a good point to bring up. And then 2, they just don't like their wife anymore. They've spent so many years basically henpecked as a bitch, there's just too much resentment. They relish the shit test because it gives them another opportunity to demonstrate their psychological dominance. They love comfort tests because they intentionally love failing them and letting their wife feast on her own insecurities just like they used to. And this is great in the short term for them, but in the long run just leads to a divorce. And they lose twice because first the man got henpecked for most of the marriage, but then he got divorced for emotional abuse. So my recommendation for your next move is come back, comfort, give a little more, not much. Little goes a long way. Insight into your mouth. Something like, I'm improving myself physically and professionally for us. I want to live a long time, have a long marriage. He's basically describing something that's called the come to Jesus speech, and I'll get to that one too. So long term, if you want to avoid comfort tests in the future, reward your wife for being a good first officer as much as you dismiss her for being a bad one. So 2 things I was going to come back to. The first one is about the captain first officer analogy. It's obviously not ideal because, I mean, she's not a first officer. When shit gets bad, she's just going to leave. So you don't really have a first officer who's not invested. Daddy knows best tends to work better. The idea that you're the benevolent dictator handling these things and it works, right? In this case, you kind of ignore what I just said because it makes sense. You can frame it however you want to. Essentially, most guys are in such dire straits with women, wife, whatever, that they don't know what they want. They only know what they don't want. That's a great starting point. Remove the things you don't want. In this case, constant henpecking from the wife. She never gives them a fitness test to see if she's sexually desirable or not. And then they finally start to get that. They remove all the negatives. She doesn't give me shit anymore. She's sexually available. This is great. But then they don't think about what do I want. And that's where these comfort tests come in. Now you can do the captain analogy. It doesn't matter what analogy you use. You never start to think of what does my wife do that makes me appreciate her more than just a plate that I'm having sex with on the weekends. Once you answer that question, that's when you can use the concept of reward good behavior, don't reward bad behavior. That's literally the point of it. But everybody talks about it all the time and it never works out that way. It's this case. When she's worried about being a good woman in your life, what does she have to do to be a good woman in your life? Does she know? Have you mentioned it? And don't give me the whole women automatic, like, no. If you listen to men and women talking in relationships, we're fucking stupid. So yeah, you gotta be explicit. You gotta let her know. Hey man, dinner was great. That was the best thing ever. I am so lucky to be a guy with a girl like you. Or maybe like she rubs your back when you had a rough day at work. Oh man, nobody has ever rubbed my back like that. I don't think I could ever do without you. Yeah, lay it on thick. That's fine. But that's the point. The things that she does when she wants to keep you loyal, you reward those things. And the beauty of it is, if you've actually built up enough alpha characteristics in your life, you're attractive, you're not unattractive, you got pre-select, all that other stuff. You know, everything that you would call alpha behaviors, right? As long as you got all of that, a lot of the times, just your validation is enough as a reward. So you don't have to like, oh, I'll buy flowers every time she rubs my back. Like, no. In the same way that the daughter gives dad a finger painting and he puts it up on the fridge, that's you now. But without the weird, like, family vibes to it. Anyways. What was the second part? Oh, yeah. So the second part is the residual anger stuff. They just don't like their wife anymore. I should specify, there's two situations where this happens. We found it out years later. The first one is a residual anger phase. And a lot of guys ask that. They're like, I don't get it. I've done all my map. I've made myself attractive. I've run Jed. Why don't I like my wife anymore? Those are temporary. It goes away. It's essentially the wife is still an example of how you used to be a piece of shit. And as you look at her, it can't be my fault that she's reflecting all of my piss poor behavior in the past. It has to be her fault. And that manifests as not finding her attractive anymore. That goes away with time. It's actually a mental model we've given called the 1,000-foot tow rope. The idea is that if you're towing a ship behind you, you got like a 1,000-foot tow rope, and it takes time for all that to feed out. So you're not going to see changes from them for a long time. And so, yeah, so there's this initial phase before they start to catch up and realize that, oh my God, he's attractive and he's got expectations for me. Then once that happens, all that stuff goes away. It's great. And then the other ones where the guy is just like an emotional child, you know, covert narcissistic personality disorder, that kind of shit, where you just want to punish her because you're the fucking man now and she needs to know that. You need to hold her. When I hear guys talking about holding women accountable, this is what I picture. Because this is essentially what it is. How dare you, and it's single guys, married guy, whatever. How dare you reject me? I'm going to reject you at the 10-year high school reunion. How dare you reject me? I'm going to make sure I sleep with you and never call you again. It's like that scene from Anchorman. I'm going to take your mother out for a wonderful steak dinner and never call her again. Dorothy Manstooth is a saint. If it sounds childlike and emotional and brash and like the response to a narcissistic injury, it absolutely is. So try to identify which one is you. If it's the first one, just keep going, put up with it. It'll be a phase, it's gone. If it's the second one, I don't know, go see a shrink because you're a bit of a child. Anyways, I'm going to leave you to it. Enjoy yourselves.